So as another evaluation of the perfSONAR regular testing interface, we're going to be looking at the last metric, which is the Traceroute metric. And what Traceroute is a measurement of the path that's taken between a source and a destination across a network. And there are many reasons that we would want to do this. Often we want to combine the results of such a metric with other things like throughput or latency or packet loss, so that in the event that we're having a network implication or trouble, we can go out and try to fix it. So the way that we would configure this Traceroute test is very similar to the other tests that we've already configured. We're going to use the regular testing interface on the nettest.lbl.gov instance of perfSONAR. We would visit it via the left-hand side screen here underneath Configuration Tests. So once we click on this, it's going to ask us to authenticate if we haven't authenticated already, because this is a feature that's only available to administrators of this machine. When this screen loads up, we see that we have our scheduled testing interface, and in this case we already have several that are configured. We can go through and configure each of these, or we can delete them or disable them, but in this case we're going to add a new Traceroute test, and we do this by clicking on the button at the bottom of the screen right here. When we click on this, we get a dialog box that allows us to fill in a couple of things. It also sets some sensible defaults. We always have to name this test so that we can refer to it later. So I'm just going to call this the video Traceroute test. I'll go through each of these options in the dialog. The first option sets the interface that the traffic would be egressing on the host itself. If the host happens to have multiple interfaces, we can select which one we want to launch this out of. In this case, we only have one host, one address for this machine, so we can just use the default. The next option that we have the ability to set is the time between tests. So this is set to be run a test every 10 minutes. So what this means is that on a 24-hour scale, we end up building up a lot of these tests, and these are stored in the back-end database. And the reason that we would want to run a test every 10 minutes is to evaluate if there's going to be a networking change, and we would be able to then isolate this to a very specific time window. This is a very lightweight test. It doesn't require a lot of CPU or network to run, so we would recommend that you do want to run it rather frequently, and 10 minutes is a good interval. The second option here sets the packet size in bytes of how the little probes are used to execute this test. In this case, they're very small. They're 40 bytes in size. We also have some other options here that are not set. For instance, if we always wanted to report starting at a certain hop, for instance, if we always knew that our host would be 3 hops in on our local area network, we may not want to report those at all times. Maybe we always want to report them. So we're not going to set this field. This will save every single hop along the way. We can also set a maximum number of hops if we're concerned that there's going to be many that are going to be showing up in our test. Once we've configured all the different options, we're going to click Add. And what that'll do is it'll load this into the scheduled testing interface, and it'll allow us to add tests to participate in this. We start off with having no test members, and there's 2 ways that we can add in hosts to participate in this measurement. The first way is by using the Add New Host button if we happen to know the name of it already. So I'm going to enter in the name of a collaborator, perfsonar.nsrc.org, and we don't need to add a description if we don't want to. But once we click the Add button there, that host will show up in this Test Members field, and that indicates that we're going to be running a test to it. The other way that we can add in hosts is we can try to locate them via the Global Lookup Service. This host participates in 2 different communities. If we clicked on one of the communities, it's going to go out and look for other hosts that may be participating. In this case, it wasn't able to find any. So once we've added all the different hosts into our test, we always click Save at the bottom of the screen. And what this does is it does 2 things. It saves the configuration file so that the test can be invoked on the back end. And it also restarts this regular testing interface so that the test will start right away. So over the course of a day, approximately every 10 minutes, we're going to be running this Traceroute test and storing the results in the database. Once we have several results, it may take a couple of hours for that to show up, we can then look at the visualizations that are located on the left-hand side of the screen here. For instance, if we looked at the Traceroute Graphs after a couple of hours, we would start to see what the results are between our host and that host that we've just configured a test against.